In today's video, I want to share something that might change how you think about building wealth entirely. After 60 years of watching investors, I've noticed what most people never consider. The ones who fail aren't failing because they lack intelligence or information. They're failing because they never learned how to think. I've made every mistake an investor can make. Bought too high, sold too low, let ego override logic, chased trends I didn't understand. But the one thing I got right, the daily habit that built everything Warren and I have, is so ridiculously simple that smart people refuse to believe it works. That's exactly why it works. Let me show you what I mean. I watched two investors for 30 years. The first one worked harder than anyone I knew. Harvard MBA, 60-hour weeks, up at 5 a.m. every morning, devouring market reports like his life depended on it. He did everything right. 30 years later, his record was average. The second one just sat in his office and read, quietly, for hours, every single day. 30 years later, he became one of the wealthiest people on earth. They breathed the same financial air, same newspapers landing on their desks every morning, same market crashes to navigate, same bull runs to ride, same opportunities passing by their windows. Yet their outcomes couldn't have been more different. What separated them wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't connections. It was that daily habit I mentioned, the one that sounds too boring to be true. You want to know how to make 10 times your money in the market? Everyone does. But very few ever ask the only question that actually matters. What kind of person earns it? That question changed everything for me. And by the end of this, it might change everything for you. That second investor I mentioned, the quiet one who just sat and read, that was Warren Buffett. And I appreciated that pattern because I watched it unfold for more than 50 years as his partner. The first investor did everything the business schools taught him. Brilliant mind, sharp as a razor. He traded frequently, always positioning for the next move, always chasing the next opportunity. He analyzed charts in the evening and studied reports every morning. Warren did something that looked almost lazy by comparison. He read books, annual reports, business histories, biographies of people who built things. 5 or 6 hours a day, every single day. He rarely traded. Sometimes months would pass without a single transaction. The difference between them wasn't intelligence. The first investor was genuinely brilliant. It wasn't access to information. They had the same newspapers, the same data, the same opportunities. It wasn't luck. 30 years is too long for luck to explain anything. The difference was a daily habit, one that looks boring, feels slow, and pays off in decades rather than days. The habit is this: becoming a learning machine. Charlie Munger's advice: in every talk show, every interview, every shareholder meeting, always return to this single principle. Not stock picking, not market timing, not complex financial engineering. Learning every single day, without exception. Today I'm going to explain exactly what that means, why it works, and how you can apply it to your own investing, whether you're managing millions or just starting with your first $1,000. But I have to warn you, what I'm about to share isn't exciting. It won't make you feel clever at parties. It goes against everything the financial industry wants you to believe, and that's precisely why it works so well. When I say learning machine, people nod politely like it's a motivational poster you'd see in a corporate lobby. Something nice to say, but not really actionable. That's not what I mean at all. A learning machine is a specific discipline, a compulsion, really, to acquire knowledge systematically, think about it deeply, and update your understanding constantly as new evidence appears. It's not reading headlines. It's not scrolling through financial Twitter. It's not listening to podcasts while you're half distracted doing something else. It's sitting down with a book or an annual report, giving it your complete attention, thinking carefully about what you're reading, and connecting it to everything else you know. Then doing that again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. For decades. Warren started when he was 10 years old. Not because anyone told him to, because he was obsessed with understanding how the world actually works, how businesses make money, how people make decisions, why some companies thrive while others fail. He read everything he could find on these subjects. And here's the remarkable thing, he never stopped. Most people learn just enough to get through school, then hit cruise control for the rest of their lives. They graduate right into intellectual retirement. They spend the next 40 years slowly forgetting whatever little they knew while the world changes around them. I've watched this pattern destroy countless investors. They form their opinions at 30, defend them at 40, and wonder at 60 why their approach stopped working. The world evolved. They didn't. Warren didn't do that. He kept reading, kept thinking, kept updating his mental models long after most people his age had started collecting pension checks and watching television. That's why his investment record didn't fade with age like an athlete's performance does. It got better. The moment you stop learning, you start dying intellectually first, then financially, and often literally soon after. I mean that without exaggeration. Look around at retired people who stopped engaging with new ideas. Their minds atrophy, their judgment deteriorates, their world shrinks. It's not aging that destroys them. It's the cessation of intellectual growth. The brain is like a muscle, use it or lose it. People who stay curious into their 80s and 90s remain sharp. People who retire their minds at 65 are mentally old within a decade, regardless of their physical health. Warren improved after passing normal retirement age. Not because his eyesight got better, it didn't. Because his judgment did. He accumulated 60 years of pattern recognition, 60 years of studying human behavior, 60 years of watching businesses succeed and fail. All that compound learning made him more formidable at 90 than he was at 40. The same information that confused younger investors clarified immediately for him, because he'd seen similar situations dozens of times before. And judgment compounds just like money does, perhaps even more powerfully. Think about what 60 years of daily learning actually means. If you read for 5 hours a day, that's roughly 1,800 hours per year. Over 60 years, that's 108,000 hours of deliberate study. The expertise that accumulates from that level of commitment is almost impossible to compete against. Most people won't do it. They'll spend those hours on entertainment instead, television, social media, passive consumption that adds nothing to their understanding, and then they wonder why their investments underperform. The connection is direct and unavoidable. What you do with your hours determines what you become. What you become determines what you earn. Everyone talks about compound interest. Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Every financial advisor shows you the chart where small amounts grow into fortunes over time. But almost nobody talks about the compounding that makes financial compounding possible, mental compounding. Here's the uncomfortable truth that took me years to fully understand. You cannot compound money faster than you compound knowledge. Your portfolio is just a reflection of your mind. If your thinking is chaotic, reactive, and poorly informed, your results will match. If your mind is refined, disciplined, and constantly learning, your returns will eventually catch up. Following Charlie Munger's investing portfolios over the decades reveals this pattern repeatedly. The money followed the mental work, not the other way around. Let me explain how mental compounding actually works. Every book you read, every business you analyze in depth, every mistake you study carefully, all of it adds a tiny piece to what I call your lattice work of understanding. Most of it doesn't seem immediately useful. You read about biology and wonder what it has to do with investing. You study psychology and don't see an obvious application. But over time, these seemingly disconnected threads weave together into a framework strong enough to catch opportunities that others can't even perceive. They lack the mental models to recognize what they're seeing. This is what I mean by a lattice work of mental models. You need frameworks from multiple disciplines: psychology, economics, physics, biology, history, all working together. Each model by itself is limited, but combined, they create something far more powerful than any single perspective. If all you know is finance, you're what I call a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. You'll confuse stock price with value, activity with insight. The world will look random and chaotic because you'll only have one lens to view it through. But if you've studied how incentives drive behavior, how competitive advantages erode over time, how human psychology creates predictable patterns of overreaction, suddenly the chaos starts making sense. Patterns emerge. Causes become visible. Let me give you a concrete example. In 1963, American Express faced a catastrophic scandal. A company that stored vegetable oil using Amex warehouse receipts as collateral had been running a massive fraud. When it collapsed, American Express was potentially liable for hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. The stock crashed. Everyone panicked. Wall Street fled. Warren bought heavily. From the outside, it looked like either genius or insanity. People wondered if he had inside information or some special insight. He didn't have either. What he had was decades of preparation meeting a specific moment. He'd spent years studying how people actually behave, not how economists say they should behave, but how they really do. He'd analyzed countless businesses to understand what creates durable competitive advantages. He'd watched previous scandals and panics to see how they typically resolved. When the American Express crisis hit, his brain had already rehearsed similar situations hundreds of times in different contexts. While everyone else reacted emotionally, fear, confusion, herd behavior, Warren's prepared mind saw clearly. The fraud was real, but it wouldn't destroy American Express. The brand remained valuable. The traveler's checks business remained intact. The customer relationships were unaffected by warehouse fraud in New Jersey. The market was overreacting. He was right. It was one of the best investments of his early career. And it came not from special access or insider tips, but from years of building the mental framework to see what others couldn't. That's what mental compounding actually does for you. It gives you reflexes of rationality instead of reflexes of panic. When the moment comes, and moments always come, you act from decades of accumulated wisdom rather than momentary emotion. Many investing channels focus on the portfolio allocation. That misses the deeper point entirely. The portfolio is the output. The thinking is the input. Fix the input, and the output takes care of itself. Now, here's the part about compounding that most people never consider. Think about your mental energy, your time, your attention, your curiosity. These are your retained earnings as a human being. Just like a company's retained earnings get reinvested for future growth, your mental capital gets reinvested into future understanding. The question is, how are you investing those earnings? You can spend them doom scrolling, consuming outrage content, chasing the latest crypto speculation that promises to make you rich by Friday. That's burning your capital on immediate consumption entertainment disguised as education. Or you can reinvest them into better thinking, deeper understanding, stronger mental frameworks that actually compound over time. The difference in outcomes is staggering. Two people start with similar intelligence at age 25. One invests their mental capital wisely for 40 years. The other burns it on entertainment and distraction. By 65, they're not even comparable. The first has become almost superhuman in their judgment. The second has simply gotten older. Warren reinvested his curiosity every single day for 80 years. People call the results genius when they see them. It's not genius. It's consistency applied over a very long timeline. And consistency looks boring, even foolish, right up until it looks legendary. That's just how compounding works. The early years feel pointless. The progress is invisible. You read and study and think, and nothing dramatic happens. Then somewhere around year 15 or 20, things start clicking. Connections form automatically. Insights appear from nowhere. You recognize patterns instantly that would take others months to see. That's the inflection point of mental compounding. And most people quit long before they reach it. Let me tell you about the enemy of compound learning. It's not stupidity. Stupid people can still learn. It's not lack of access. Information has never been more available. The enemy is distraction. And we live in the most distraction-rich environment in human history. You exist in a world specifically designed to capture your attention and sell it to the highest bidder. Every device in your pocket, every app on your phone, every feed you scroll through, all of it exists primarily to hijack your focus for someone else's profit. You think you're learning. You think you're staying informed. Mostly you're just consuming noise that's been engineered for addiction rather than understanding. The modern information environment gives you the pleasant illusion of knowing everything while ensuring you actually remember nothing that matters. Abundance of data, scarcity of wisdom. That constant distraction is absolute poison to the compounding process. Let me contrast two approaches to staying informed. Person A wakes up and immediately checks their phone. Market news, Twitter, Reddit. They consume dozens of headlines before breakfast. Throughout the day, they check prices constantly, react to every piece of news, feel the emotional roller coaster of market movements. By evening, they've consumed hundreds of pieces of information. Person B wakes up, makes coffee, and sits down with one annual report or one chapter of a serious book. They read slowly, take notes, think about what they're reading. They might spend 2 hours on 20 pages. Then they go about their day. They check prices once, maybe twice. By evening, they've consumed one thing deeply. Which one is actually learning? Which one is building compound understanding? Person A knows everything that happened today. Person B understands something that's been true for decades. In investing and in life, understanding durable truths beats knowing temporary facts every single time. When I was young, in the 1,930 seconds and 1,940 seconds, information moves slowly. If you wanted to learn something, you had to actively seek it out. You had to go to a library, find the right book, read carefully, because that book might be the only source you could access. There was natural friction in the process. That friction forced depth. You couldn't just skim because there wasn't an endless stream of alternatives. You had to sit with ideas, wrestle with them, let them sink in. Now, information is completely frictionless. And unfortunately, so is stupidity. People gorge themselves on headlines, tweets, hot takes, and stock tips until their minds are bloated with trivia, but starved for actual wisdom. They mistake familiarity for knowledge. They've heard of something, so they think they understand it. They mistake stimulation for insight. They feel engaged, so they assume they're learning. Here's a hard truth. You cannot outcompete someone who sits quietly and thinks for hours while you're frantically scrolling through financial Twitter. No matter how smart you are, the internet is full of people who sound intelligent but think shallowly. They confuse the ability to recite recent headlines with the ability to understand underlying causes. They know the what, but never the why. The result is an entire generation of investors who can quote every market event from the past month, but can't explain a single one with any depth. That's not compounding. That's intellectual decay. Knowledge that never sticks. Wisdom that never forms. The quality of your inputs determines the quality of your outputs. Garbage in, garbage out. Noise in, confusion out. If you want to rebuild your ability to actually learn, not just consume, start by deliberately starving your brain of junk information. Treat information exactly like food. Most of what's served today is ultra-processed garbage engineered for addictive taste rather than nutritional value. Don't eat every idea that crosses your screen just because it's there. Select deliberately. Read what has lasted, what has survived decades or centuries of scrutiny. Think carefully instead of racing to the next thing. Write down your thoughts, because writing forces clarity and exposes lazy thinking that can hide in your head. That kind of deliberate, focused learning is increasingly rare, which is precisely why it's increasingly valuable. Now, I want to tell you something that goes against every instinct the modern world has trained into you. The habit that separates amateur investors from masters isn't action. It's the ability to sit completely still, to wait patiently until something truly worthwhile appears in front of you. This turns out to be much harder than it sounds. The market opens every single day. Prices move every second. Your phone vibrates constantly with news and supposed opportunities. You feel like you're falling behind, missing out, if you don't react to something. But that feeling, that anxiety about inaction, is exactly how the market systematically robs you through your own impatience. Warren and I built Berkshire Hathaway on a simple idea that sounds almost stupid when you first hear it. Don't just do something, stand there. We didn't try to swing at every pitch the market threw at us. We waited patiently for the fat pitch, the perfect opportunity. Sometimes we stood at the plate for months, even years, doing absolutely nothing while others traded frantically. People laughed at that approach. They called it lazy or outdated. Then one day we'd finally swing, and the ball would go out of the park. A huge, permanent gain that justified years of patience. That's compounding in action. Years of disciplined nothing followed by a single moment of clarity and conviction. The problem is that most investors cannot psychologically tolerate boredom or inaction. They'd rather lose money doing something than earn quietly doing nothing. They mistake motion for progress, as if frenzied activity can somehow compensate for lack of understanding. At Berkshire, we've had entire years with no major moves, no big acquisitions, no dramatic portfolio changes. And the returns kept compounding beautifully anyway because our previous decisions were intelligent and we didn't ruin them by constant tinkering. Think about what that implies. The gains came not from action, but from restraint. Not from brilliant new moves, but from not messing with the brilliant old ones. If you find a truly great business run by honest, capable people, earning high returns on capital, why would you ever sell it just to feel busy? That's like pulling up a healthy tree every week to check if the roots are growing. You'll kill it through your own impatience. Some of the channels sharing information about Charlie Munger's investing portfolios show the trading activity, or rather, the lack of it, holdings kept for decades, positions that simply compound year after year without interference. That patience isn't passive. It's the most active form of discipline there is. Let me tell you what doing nothing actually looks like in practice, because people misunderstand this completely. It's not sitting on a beach drinking cocktails. It's reading annual reports for hours. It's thinking carefully about businesses and competitive dynamics. It's rechecking your assumptions against new evidence. It's studying quietly while everyone else chases headlines. Then, when the right opportunity finally appears, and you'll know it when you see it, you move with full force and complete conviction. That's not laziness at all. That's years of preparation meeting patience at exactly the right moment. People call us lucky when they see that happen, when we make one big move that works beautifully. But luck favors the investor who was ready to act decisively after years of deliberately not acting. The ability to do nothing is emotional discipline at its highest form. It's self-restraint in a world addicted to impulse and instant gratification. And like all forms of discipline, it's deeply uncomfortable, which is precisely why so few people ever master it. Warren once joked that our favorite holding period is forever. He wasn't exaggerating. When you find something truly exceptional, the best course of action is often to stop looking for something better. Just hold it, protect it, let it compound for decades. That's how real wealth gets built. Not through clever trading or market timing, through patient ownership of excellent businesses. Now I want to share with you the mental tool that has guided more of my good decisions than any other. It's called inversion. And it's devastatingly simple. Instead of asking how to succeed, ask what behaviors guarantee failure. Instead of asking how to make better investments, ask what mistakes reliably destroy portfolios. Then simply don't do those things. It sounds almost too simple to be useful. But that simplicity is precisely what makes it so powerful. The great mathematician Jacobi had a motto: invert, always invert. He found that many difficult problems became simple when approached backward instead of forward. The same principle applies to investing, to business, and to life itself. The truth is, there are countless ways to fail at investing, but only a few ways to succeed. If you just eliminate the obvious stupidities from your behavior, the rest tends to take care of itself. Charlie Munger's advice throughout decades of talks always returned to this principle. Avoid stupidity before you chase brilliance, because brilliance is rare and unpredictable, but stupidity is common and entirely avoidable. I've said it for years. It's remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. That statement surprises people. They want to hear about brilliant insights and genius moves. But the reality is much more boring. Most of our success came from avoiding obvious mistakes that other people make repeatedly. Let me give you the catalog of stupidities that destroy investors. Leverage at the wrong time. Borrowing money to amplify returns sounds smart in theory. In practice, it transforms temporary setbacks into permanent catastrophes. Markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. I've watched dozens of brilliant people blow up their portfolios through leverage. They were right about the investment, but wrong about the timing. The market moved against them temporarily. Their leverage magnified the loss. They got margin called, and they were forced to sell at exactly the wrong moment. Being smart doesn't protect you from leverage. If anything, smart people are more prone to this mistake because they're confident in their analysis. But confidence doesn't stop margin calls. Ego that prevents admitting mistakes. The moment you lose money, your ego kicks in powerfully. You want to fix it immediately to prove you were right all along. That's how small, manageable mistakes become fatal ones that wipe you out completely. The best investors I've known have no attachment to being right. They care about being accurate. There's a difference. Being right is about ego. Being accurate is about reality. When reality contradicts their view, they change their view. Most people do the opposite. They try to rationalize why reality must be wrong. Overconfidence about predictions. Nobody knows what the market will do next month or next year, but people desperately want to believe they can predict it. That desire leads to concentrated bets based on forecasts that are almost certainly wrong. The future is genuinely uncertain. Not uncertain because we lack data, uncertain because it hasn't happened yet. No amount of analysis can predict things that are inherently unpredictable. Smart investors plan for multiple scenarios instead of predicting one. Envy-driven decisions. Your neighbor made money on a stock. Your colleague got rich on crypto. The emotional need to keep up drives more bad decisions than almost anything else. Envy is particularly destructive because it forces you to compare your portfolio to others. But someone else's success tells you nothing about what's right for you. They might have different time horizons, different risk tolerances, different financial situations. Copying them makes no sense, but envy makes people do it anyway. Complexity you don't understand. If you can't explain an investment in simple terms, you don't understand it well enough to own it. Complex instruments are designed to extract money from people who don't understand them. Wall Street produces complexity because complexity confuses people, and confused people pay higher fees. The most profitable investments are often the simplest. Buy good businesses at fair prices and hold them for decades. Nothing complicated about it. At Berkshire, we built our entire approach around avoiding these stupidities. We never borrowed heavily to amplify returns. Even when leverage would have accelerated our growth, we avoided it because we understood the asymmetric risk. The upside of leverage is arithmetic. Your gains are multiplied. But the downside is existential. You can be wiped out entirely. We never bought businesses we didn't understand, no matter how profitable they looked or how popular they were. If we couldn't explain the competitive advantage in simple terms, we passed. We missed some winners this way, but we also missed countless disasters that destroyed people who didn't understand what they owned. We never tried to impress anyone with cleverness. We did simple things repeatedly for a very long time. That's boring. That doesn't make for exciting conference presentations, but it works. And most importantly, we never risked what we had and needed for what we didn't have and didn't need. That single principle eliminates most catastrophic mistakes before they can happen. Here's the math that makes inversion so powerful. Success requires being correct, sometimes making some good decisions that compound over time. But failure only requires being stupid once. One catastrophic mistake, one moment of reckless overconfidence, one ego trip at the wrong time, one over-leveraged bet. Any of these can undo decades of careful, patient work. The asymmetry is severe. You can be right 10 times and have it wiped out by being wrong once if that one time is catastrophic enough. This is the principle in its purest form. Design your life to avoid the catastrophes. The successes will take care of themselves. When we made mistakes at Berkshire, and we made plenty over the years, we admitted them quickly and moved on without drama. We didn't defend our stupidity or make excuses. We dissected it coldly, like surgeons. What did we miss? What assumption was wrong? How can we avoid making this exact mistake again? That's learning through inversion, turning every failure into a detailed blueprint of what not to do next time. Over a long enough timeline, avoiding repeat mistakes compounds just like money does, perhaps even more powerfully. Each mistake you eliminate is a permanent improvement. The benefits accumulate forever. Let me give you something concrete. 5 practices that, applied daily, will transform your investing over decades. First, build walls around your attention as if it were your most valuable capital, because it is. Decide deliberately what deserves your focus and ruthlessly exclude everything else. You don't need to know what's trending on social media. You need to know what's true, what's durable, what actually matters to your investments and your life. This is hard. The world is specifically designed to breach those walls constantly. But every successful investor I've known has developed the ability to ignore most of what's happening and focus only on what matters. Second, read far more than you react. If your day contains more clicks and scrolls than pages read, you're feeding the wrong mental muscle. Warren spends most of his waking hours reading newspapers, annual reports, books, trade journals, because he understands a simple truth. The big money in investing is not in the buying and selling. It's in the waiting and thinking. Reading is how you prepare for opportunities that haven't appeared yet. When they do appear, you'll recognize them because you've been building the mental framework to see them. Third, write things down regularly. Writing forces clarity in a way that thinking alone doesn't. It exposes lazy reasoning and vague understanding. Half the nonsense in this world would disappear immediately if people had to write out their ideas clearly before speaking them. When you're considering an investment, write down why you're buying it. Write down what would make you sell it. Write down what you might be missing. That discipline alone will prevent most mistakes. Fourth, deliberately avoid the crowd's emotions, especially during market volatility. Modern media is specifically designed to make you anxious. Anxiety keeps you watching, clicking, engaging, but anxiety and clear thinking don't mix at all. The calmer your mind, the sharper your judgment becomes. When everyone is panicking, that's precisely when you need to be calmest. When everyone is euphoric, that's when you need to be most skeptical. Your job is to think independently, not to feel what everyone else is feeling. Fifth, be brutally selective about whose ideas you allow into your mind. You can't learn from everyone. Most people are just echoing what they heard somewhere else, noise, amplifying noise. Find thinkers who have survived the test of time, people who were right 50 years ago and are still right today. Then study why they were right, what principles guided them, what they avoided. That's where lasting wisdom lives. Here's a question I want you to ask yourself every time you feel the urge to act in your portfolio. Every time you want to make a trade, react to news, or adjust your positions? Am I moving because it's actually smart or because I can't psychologically sit still? That single question, asked honestly, has saved Warren and me billions of dollars over the decades. Usually, the honest answer is that you want to move because inaction feels uncomfortable, not because action is actually intelligent. Recognizing that distinction is worth more than any stock tip you'll ever receive. And let me be clear about what doing nothing actually looks like in practice. Doesn't mean ignoring your investments. It means reading and studying constantly while trading rarely. It means building understanding every day while acting perhaps once or twice a year. It means being maximally informed and minimally active. That combination, deep learning plus patient inaction, is the recipe that built Berkshire Hathaway from a struggling textile mill into one of the most valuable companies on earth. Let me close with the simplest summary I can offer. Go to bed a little wiser than when you woke up. That's it. No algorithms, no insider magic, no proprietary formulas, just daily intellectual discipline practiced so consistently that almost no one actually does it. And that's precisely why it works so well. The market punishes arrogance and impatience, but it richly rewards the quiet learners who can wait. Over decades, the difference becomes astronomical. That's the 10x effect people dream about, not from speculation or luck, but from mental compounding that eventually shows up in your portfolio. Everyone talks about compounding money. Hardly anyone talks about compounding the mind first. But the truth is brutally simple. Money only compounds in the hands of a rational mind. If your thinking doesn't improve year after year, your investment returns won't either. It's that straightforward, that unavoidable. The problem is that mental compounding doesn't show up on any chart or statement, so people ignore it completely. They chase the visible gains while neglecting the invisible foundation that makes gains possible. The market rewards patience over decades, but the human brain resists patience over minutes. That's why most people never get truly wealthy, not because they lack opportunity, but because they can't wait long enough for the invisible compounding to work its magic. I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. The first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. Most people interrupt their own compounding every single day with noise, with ego, with emotion, with impatience. They can't sit still long enough for real learning to take effect. They can't wait long enough for real wealth to accumulate. And if you're approaching retirement, this matters even more. The money you've saved needs smart decisions to protect it for decades to come. The investors who keep learning past 60 don't just preserve their wealth, they grow it, while others watch theirs erode through panic and poor judgment. When Warren and I started working together over 50 years ago, we didn't know everything about investing. We still don't today. But what we had was a mental habit, a discipline of collecting good ideas slowly and discarding bad ones even more slowly. We tested everything against reality. We weren't trying to get rich quickly, which is what the crowd always wants. We were trying to get wise slowly, methodically. The money came later, as a natural byproduct of correct thinking compounded over an absurdly long time. Your investment returns will never exceed your rate of learning. If you want compounding to show up in your portfolio, make absolutely certain it's happening in your head first. Learn something valuable every day. Think deeply about what you learn instead of just consuming it. And let time, not emotion, not impatience, not fear of missing out do the heavy lifting. That's how mental compounding becomes financial compounding. That's how ordinary intelligence practiced consistently over decades turns into extraordinary wealth. The investors who appear inactive are usually the ones doing the deepest, most valuable work. The ones who appear hyperactive are often just compensating for shallow thinking with frantic motion. In a world that celebrates constant activity, the slow learner looks like a fool right up until compounding makes them look like a genius. Choose patience. Choose silence. Choose daily learning over daily distraction and reaction. Because in the long run, I promise you this, The investor who can think deeply for one focused hour per day will dramatically outperform the one who reacts frantically 24 hours a day. That's not optimism or motivation. That's just arithmetic and human psychology working together over time. Wealth is built slowly. Wisdom is built slower. But both compound if you have the patience to let them.